Okay, so it's 4:02, and we've just hit the 50 number, or there's one more to come in, and I'm sure people will continue to join us. But I'm going to make a start. So my name is Rory. If you haven't got sick of seeing my face yet and don't know who I am, I'm Rory. I'm going to be chairing this session for us, and we're going to be talking for the next 58 minutes about communication and spirituality. And we've got three very interesting speakers for you in this session who are going to cover quite different topics actually, but all obviously related to this theme of communication. And there's a couple of questions that we had in our blurb, which I'm just going to read out to you first to get an idea of kind of where we're coming from with this session. So the first thing that we asked is, what is our message as Unitarians or as people of faith, or however we might want to define ourselves? And how can we use social media and websites and different communications channels to better communicate who we are and to communicate what we believe and to try and change our world for the better? So that's our challenge in the next just under an hour. Our first speaker is Stephen Lingwood, who some of you may have seen yesterday in his book launch for his new book, Seeking Paradise. And Stephen is going to talk to us about what is our message. So I'll hand over to Stephen now for the next 10 minutes. And he's already given me permission, if he goes over 10 minutes, to mute him. So I'll be there with my finger ready on the mute. But for now, I'll hand over to you, Stephen. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rory. Yeah, okay, I'm trying to keep an eye on the time. I shouldn't go over 10 minutes. I've not got that much complicated things to say. I spoke a lot yesterday. So there are kind of two aspects of something I want to talk about today. I want to say one kind of really practical sort of thing, which is a practical tip, which relates to the second thing where I want to speak more in terms of spiritual and theological message. What is our spiritual and theological message? So one practical thing, which is what I say about social media, particularly things like Twitter. What I always think we should do is to give samples, not menus, right? Give samples, not menus. So what I mean by that, I see in some use of social media, some people might say, oh, either the worship leader or the congregation would say, oh, I am, or we are, like this Sunday I am talking about compassion, for example. So or this Sunday so and so will preach on compassion. And I always think, well, that's a menu, right? Saying you will speak about compassion. So I say, don't give a menu, give a sample. So what is it you're actually going to say about compassion? Make your sermon the size of a tweet and then say it. So actually say what it is. So don't say, I'm going to talk about compassion. What are you going to say about compassion? And then say it through the social media. Say compassion is what we need in the world right now. Or people think compassion is about kindness when actually it's about imagination. Like, what is the point that you're actually making in giving? If people are interested, they're more likely to come along. But just to say in an abstract something is going to be talked about, I don't think that whets the appetite. It does if you give a sample and not just a menu. That's the sort of thing that comes in the form of just like a tip, I think, in terms of social media use. The broader and deeper points that I want to make today is about our theological and spiritual messaging. And the large point I want to make is that the message, I think, and I operate on the basis that our message should be a self-transcending message, not a self-referential message, right? That our message is not saying, come to us because we're really good, come to us because we're really great. But we're able to actually say something that is about a process, an offering, a vision for the world, pointing to something greater than who we are, but pointing to what we can do, and what we offer and what we're having faith in, not just ourselves. And I was thinking about this today, and I was kind of looking up a few things. It's interesting because if I'd done this in Birmingham, like, I wouldn't have had this. But because I was thinking about this today, I kind of looked in some cupboards and drawers that I had, and I looked up some leaflets that I have, right? And I have a couple of leaflets from two different Buddhist communities, two different Buddhist movements, quite radically different Buddhist movements. But these kind of leaflets publicity they use. One of these leaflets, one of these Buddhist leaflets, talks about we offer the development of lasting mental peace, right? That's what they're offering: lasting mental peace, learning meditation, integrating Buddha's teachers into normal daily life. This other Buddhist leaflet says that what they do is empower each person to see the value of their life and create positive change to their own circumstances, and enable people to have positive impact on the world around them. So we're offering lasting mental peace, they're offering empowerment to people. And then I turn to our sort of leaflets, and what are we saying we're offering? Are we offering things like this? And what we say is we encourage you to think for yourself. And which has never made any sense to me, because I think I don't need encouraging to think for myself. Like, I am thinking for myself. Like, compare being encouraged to think for yourself as an offering with, I'm offering you lasting mental peace. We're offering you a chance to create positive change in your life. If you kind of pay attention to what the verbs are, like empowering versus like encouraging. And the nearest thing I can find in kind of our leaflets is things like the nurture of life's spiritual dimension. Even the way we put it isn't exactly as an offering, it's just what we do. We nurture life's spiritual dimension, which is fine, but it's a bit vague. And I think what is a drawing in message is saying something like what those Buddhist messages are saying. We empower you, we offer you a spiritual practice that is transformative. So I'm probably running out of time already. So what's some of those messages? What they could be? I'll kind of ask the question, then I kind of will answer the way I can answer it, and then you work out if you want to answer it this way or a different way. But that to me is the question. And then I want to answer with things like, what we're offering is a chance to awaken to an experience of beauty and love through spiritual practice, right? To offer an experience of deep felt beauty and love. That we're offering the tools to resist empire, to resist the powers of empire that tell you that you're a cog in an economic machine. And so are we offering a chance to find your true identity as a human being, as an individual? Are we offering empowerment of an individualism, of a humanization of the individual, which makes us not just cogs in an economic machine? Are we offering a chance to discover a profound experience of love that will transform you, that will, through spiritual practice, give you deeper joy, deeper peace, deeper hope, a chance to join in the work of the transformation of the world, the work of justice in the world, or a chance, if you want to go down this language, to experience unconditional love of God, which is a transforming experience, which is allows you to experience love and to love other people through a transformative experience of love, right? That's kind of some of the words, some of the phrases I'd want to use. But the other kind of last thing I want to say very briefly is, I mean, I've talked about leaflets, but leaflets are less important than people, right? The most important thing is witness. We witness in our lives, in everything we do, to our values, to our spirituality, to our way of being, to our faith. Ultimately, it is about who we are. It's about what we're embodying in the very embodiments of our lives, in every moment of our lives, that actually truly witnesses to our faith. There's a place for leaflets, websites, social media, there's all of that. But actually what has to come first as the foundation for everything else we do in a more pragmatic way is an embodiment of faith in the very way that we're living. I think I did 10 minutes.
Actually only on 8 minutes. So Amazing. You can talk for another 2 if you want, or I can hand over to the next person. It's up to you.
Let's move on.
But thank you very much, Stephen. Samples, not menu, I think is, if we take nothing else away from what we're hearing in this session, like that would be a really good thing to keep in mind. As you were saying it, I was thinking the tweets I put out for my congregation, like, I'm guilty. I'm guilty of doing that, just saying service at 10:45 about compassion. Like, how much does that really tell someone? So really interesting, thank you. So next we're going to hear from Cheryl. So I'll unmute you, Cheryl. If we can. Yeah, there we go. And Cheryl is in the Octagon Chapel in Norwich, and she's going to talk to us about using social media. So over to you, Cheryl. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rory. As Rory says, I'm the social media officer and the secretary at the Octagon Chapel in Norwich. So the things I'm going to cover are our mission statement as a chapel, and how it links to our approach to social media and the reasons we use the social media platforms that we do. So social media refers to websites and applications that are designed to allow people to share content quickly, efficiently, and in real time. So when talking about who we are at the Octagon Chapel, I tend to start to think about our mission statement, and that tends to be the best place to start. So our mission statement is a welcoming community of open hearts and minds who seek meaning, nourish the spirit, and engage with our diverse and changing world. So at the Octagon Chapel, we've got a really strong sense of community, both as a church family, but also in the wider community. We hold Sunday services as well as several small engagement groups. We've got Craigless, our monthly Friday evening service, and a rolling programme of midweek afternoon social connection events, which range from board games to discussion groups to craft. We have a long history of social action. We take an active role in Refugee Week, and we've been awarded the Faith Place of Sanctuary status. We're involved with Norwich Pride, and we run the LGBTQ+ events all year round. We're the home of the Octagon concert series, which has raised thousands of pounds for the local and national good causes, and we're active in our local peace camp. We've had a great get-together last year, which was an organisation from the legacy of the MP Joe Cox. That event was attended by over 300 people and gave us the opportunity to work with other local groups. Our events give people a real feel of what we hold as important to our community. Now, if you attend the Octagon Chapel regularly, you'll know that these things are happening and how closely they fit in to our mission statement. But getting this message outside our chapel walls is vital to growth and connection with our neighbours. So when looking for a new community, people will often do some research about that place first. They'll want to know at least a little about how things work, what people there were going to be like. It's unlikely that many people will feel comfortable walking into a place where they're expected to stay for around an hour, with at least a little hint about what people might be like there. They want to see people just like them. I try and use a range of pictures that represent our community, made up with people from our community. For example, for Refugee Week, we were sent posters to display, but before we did, we used these as props, asking community members which of these messages spoke to them, and if they'd be happy to have photos taken with them. These photos were used on both our Facebook and our Twitter accounts. Having real people in them helps, as people tend to share the photos, so that's creating a ripple effect of our message to a wider audience. Another prop that we found really useful at events has been large photo frames. They're often decorated with the event name and a hashtag. This often attracts groups to wanting photos taken, photos that will be shared by those in the photo, and with all our names on it. In turn, these people will look us up, and we've got somebody else knowing our name, our chapel name, and what we offer, and hopefully wanting to be part of that community in one way or another. When we recently had a racial attack in Norwich, we reacted and offered our support by republishing them photos from Refugee Week on our social media. This was part of a Norwich social media campaign, all sharing the same hashtag to create an online display of solidarity. When I add events to the chapel that we're running on our social media, I try and include as much detail as I can about the accessibility of the event. For example, plant-based milk and vegan cake is available, as is gluten-free cake and decaf teas and coffees. The hall has 4 gender-neutral toilets, one of which is wheelchair accessible. It's important to show that we as a community are inclusive, and by providing this information ahead rather than waiting for people to come, we are really showing that we are showing us walking our talk. People who for various reasons cannot attend our chapels. Social media gives opportunities to provide reflective material and encourage a spark of self-growth and discovery. We've done this in the form of sharing quotes, songs and questions. Going forward, this is an area that I know that we need to reflect on to make stronger. It's vital that we see our communities as not those people who are sitting in our pews, but we share our cake with, but also those we reach through social media and other methods. Although it's not something that we're doing through Facebook, there's also, of course, an opportunity to run services on Facebook. I'm very aware that some people don't have social media. And so when creating our website last year, we included a feed to our Facebook. So you can view our Facebook without needing an account. Over the last few weeks, we've created a Facebook group for our members. This isn't seen externally, but it's a space for our members to support one another, share thoughts, spark discussions, and for us to advertise internal events. It's been really useful in creating a space for informal pastoral care for one another, another space to gain connection during a time where it's needed so desperately. When I took the role of social media officer, I looked at different social media platforms. Facebook and Twitter were certainly 2 that fitted in best with our message that we're trying to get out to our chapel and wider community. I did have a play with Instagram, but I found it didn't really meet our needs. Facebook is clearly the most popular, with just over 700 followers, and many of our posts reach around 1,000 views. Posts with reflective quotes and pictures with people in, by far, are the most popular. Our Twitter is much newer, and although we've got a smaller following with just under 200 people, it's been a great tool to establish and nurture relationships with charities and organisations who, by retweeting us and sharing our message to their followers. Both platforms are free, and although there is ways to increase your audience with payment, we've only used this a couple of times for large one-off events that we run. Both allow us to share quickly and efficiently and in real time. I believe the Octagon social media is helping us to reach people that we wouldn't have reached before and making a difference in our community.
Lovely. Thank you, Cheryl. So we're now going to have to hand over to Natasha, who's going to take us from what our message might be through social media. Natasha's going to talk to us about websites. So I'll hand over to you, Natasha, now. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. So I started with the Manchester district, it was 2 years ago at the AGM. I left my previous job 2 days before the AGM in 2018. And one of the main obstacles for me was the website. It was completely out of date. Whilst some congregations were keeping the sites up to date, there was a lot of information that was quite misleading, and for anybody new that was coming to find out about the local congregation, the contact information wasn't there, and it wasn't really an engaging site. So we met with a web designer, Freddie, that works for Arca Digital, and we met and discussed really what we wanted the site to look like. We wanted it to be more engaging, more up to date, and just try and show people, you know, that we are fun people, that we do have a lot to offer. We wanted it to be interactive and to be able to engage with people within the Unitarian community, but also outside. It took about 6 months in total to sort of get to where we wanted to be. And initially it was just the homepage, a page for each of the congregations, and then some information, and we just decided to keep it basic, so not to overwhelm everybody. And that seemed to work well, and it ticked over slowly. We got a couple of questions through, but it wasn't really taking off in the way that we'd hoped. So we started paying extra for search engine optimization to bump the listing higher up. And we found that by publishing articles with keywords or key phrases, that enabled us to bump it up even further. So anybody that was searching for Unitarians or same-sex marriage or various things like that, they were directed straight to our website. And it has really, really taken off, especially these last, I'd probably say these last 8 to 10 months. I'm now getting phone calls and emails on a daily basis, approximately 10, 15, maybe 20 communications on a daily basis, which is fantastic in the short space of time that it's been up and running. Just a few sort of examples, really, of the engagement that we're getting through from the website. So whilst every congregation has their own page, and the contact details are on there for the ministers and the secretaries and various people, I've found that the communications are coming directly to myself, and I've sort of made notes and asked people, well, you know, why have you come direct to me? I know my details are on there, but why have you not gone direct to the congregation? And the feedback that I've had is they know that they're speaking to the same person each time. So if they're making an inquiry through myself, I follow it up with the relevant congregation or minister. I feed that information back to them, and then I follow up on the call afterwards. So say, for instance, I get a lot of calls and emails inquiring about rites of passage at certain congregations. So I take all the details, I phone the ministers, I speak to them, get all the information. They communicate direct with the person themselves, but then I make a note in the diary to follow that up. So to say, did you get everything that you wanted? Have you managed to get a booking? Or if it's a wedding or a christening, how did it go? Or I'll get the details and I'll send a card, a congratulations card, and various things. So it's just that sort of personal touch and following everything through, which has been really, really good. I've had historical walking groups that have been in contact to say that they're in the area and is it possible to access one of our chapels. So again, through that contact, where the chapels would normally be closed, I've managed to get in contact with one of the trustees, and they've opened up and they've made them tea and coffee and biscuits. People have sat and chatted for a while. The following Sunday, they've turned up to see what we're all about. So it's extending further down the website. It's using it as a communication tool, which has worked really well to date. There's other things that I've had where people are on holiday and they're in the area, and they're saying to me, rather than searching on the internet for Unitarian chapels, you know, I'm here for a week or a fortnight, can you tell me which ones are open, please? Which ones are accessible to have a look through? Which ones have got Sunday services? Which ones have got events that might be of interest? So again, rather than them contacting the individual chapels, they've got a main point of contact with myself that can then liaise with everybody and then go back to the people with that information. So what we've done then with the website, we grew it a little bit bigger, and we started to include all the events for the individual congregations. And I'll send the links for those that haven't seen the website. I'll put it in the chat message so you can have a look afterwards if you have any questions. But the individual websites, each congregation has their own page, and it lists all the events. You can filter whether you want a Sunday service, whether you're looking for a meditation group, and it allows you to select, and it will show that search filter across all our congregations. So you're not having to scroll through page after page, and we've had good feedback from that as well. And again, some of our congregations have reported, oh, somebody new came along, they said that they'd been on the website and you'd given them the information. So we've had feedback that this sort of thing is working for us. I've had as well random questions from people that have heard of Unitarianism. They're looking for something different, but simple communications like, what attire do I have to wear on the Sunday for the service? Is it suits? Is it smart? And I said, well, no. Or even somebody said to me, I've got tattoos. Do I have to cover them up for chapel? So I said, no, I've got a full sleeve. This is who I am. I'm accepted for who I am. And that has always been from day one. And I think it's breaking that barrier of people that I've met and said, you go to church? Yeah, I do. Is that because you work for them? No, it's because I enjoy it and I get so much from it, and there's so many like-minded people, and it's breaking those barriers down, which I found has been really, really helpful with meeting and speaking to people on an individual basis. That, you know, I've said to them, well, tag along with me. I'll pick you up, or, you know, you can come into the service with me, then you're not on your own. So again, it's all come through the sort of website. I've had emails and phone calls from fellow Unitarians down south, inquiring about retreats in this area, that they had a friend that was coming over here for a few weeks just for some time out, and could I recommend any places for them to stay. So again, did some research, went back to them and recommended some places. I've had inquiries about businesses, local businesses. Oh, you've got a chapel near me. Can I rent a car parking space when I'm working during the week? Or I see there's an empty plot of land attached to one of your chapels. Is it up for sale, or can we rent that property? So the extreme ends of the conversation that the website is generating is really quite outstanding. I've had, which I'll post the link on again, a gentleman author has contacted me and asked me to review a book that he's written, to produce an article for the Unitarian magazine, which I'm currently the editor for at the moment. And he said to me, look, I want a Unitarian view on this book that I've written, and I'm happy for you to share it with 5 people, and all I ask is for honest feedback. And again, I said to him, well, where did you get my contact details from? Oh, I found you on the website. Brilliant. So again, it's just different sorts of lines of communication, really. It's also opened up communications with other districts, and people are contacting me now. I had an email this morning from Nick Saunders, the editor of the NUF News and Views, and he wants to feature words from the Manchester district in his publications. So I've said, well, I'm happy to do that on a monthly basis, but can you return the favour and give me some feedback so we can report how you guys are doing over there? So again, that's come through the website. Other things as well, actually, and again, I'll post this to the chat in the moment, because I've been contacted by the CLF Europe Online, and apparently it's normally something that they have a conference, and obviously because of the situation, everything's now currently going online, and it's open to Christian liberals, but they're also inviting the Unitarians along and to join the online panel group, if you will. And it's about joining together in these difficult times, sharing ideas, discussing how we're helping each other out in terms of outreach and everything else. And they want our view on how we're dealing with the crisis and how we're reaching out. And again, this communication has come through the Manchester District website, which again that's only come through this morning. And we've also had an invite through from the Access team, and it's a webinar, and it's Creative Confidence. And it's basically, again, I can send the details, but what they're asking is people at this moment in time are sort of struggling with direction. They don't know which direction they're going in. They don't know what they should be doing for their districts, for the congregations, for the other members. And then they start to doubt themselves and lack confidence in themselves and start, you know, distrusting, am I doing the right thing? Should I be doing this? I'll just take a back seat. And these webinars are to sort of build your confidence, to be able to act now and to be able to reach out to the people that need you the most, and to be confident that whatever you're doing has got to be a positive step, because these times now we need action. We need to be doing something rather than sort of sitting back and hoping it will all blow over. So again, we've got all the details from that, and everybody's invited. It's free to join up, and it's just 3 webinars that last about 40 minutes, and it's 4 sessions in total. So again, the engagement that we're getting, it's been really, really good. We've also had phone calls just from members, not of people in Manchester district, but outside of the district, that maybe have visited the chapels once or twice, but they don't feel they're a member there, but they want to touch base with somebody and just saying, is it okay if I drop you a phone call every week? Or if there's anything interest that you get, if there's any poems, if there's any readings. I'm not on Facebook, I'm not, you know, I can't use the technology, but if there's anything that please send through to me. So again, I've started doing a list of like such, but you know, it's just feeling that connection in whichever way that they can. And like I say, especially since we've been in this situation, the outreach has grown more and more and more. Like I say, from people outside the congregation, and phone calls I've had as well is from people that are not Unitarians, that have never stepped foot in our chapel, and they've tried to reach out to other religious sectors, and the first question they've been asked is, are you a member? You know, have I seen you before? Do you come to our church services? No, I'm just looking for a bit of, you know, reassurance. And from the off, they felt isolated. So they've gone through and they've run various denominations, and then they've come through to us and been able to touch base with somebody. And again, they've asked for me to send any readings over, or some of them I've sent links to the various services that everybody's doing online, and the meditation groups and the heart and soul groups, and the Manchester District website. What we're trying to do now, the same as you're doing, Rory, is anybody that's got a new session, YouTube video, reflections, anything like that, if they send me the link, we'll update the website. So it's more of a sort of rolling thing on a daily basis now, that we can keep everybody connected through the website. So it started off, like I say, from being just an information page with contact details for each of our congregations, to now a real tool of communication. And it's amazing to see how much it's grown. You know, it seems to have just sort of sped ahead, and it's good to have that communication outlet. So it's gone above and beyond what we expected, and now we're looking to grow it even more. It's just we need to sort of get together and get feedback and find out what people want from us. But yeah, there's been a lot of engagement, and I'm very proud of everybody that's put all the hard work and effort into making it a success. And like I say, any website is only as successful as the input that you get from your congregations and everybody else. If they don't feed that information through to you, then there's nothing to keep it refreshed and keeping it up to date. So it's just encouraging everybody, no matter how small it might be a family photograph, it might be a birthday celebration, it doesn't have to be linked to the chapel, but just any sort of information that we can upload on there, you know, that it just gives us that sort of human touch, that we're not, as people have said to me, church people. You know, we are humans, we are individuals, you know, it's just getting that message across. So yeah, I don't know how long I've spoken for, but I think that sort of sums everything up.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Natasha. I've never thought about it in terms of how to persuade people that Unitarians are actually human beings, but I like that way of looking at it. That's a good one. And I would encourage people to go and look at the Manchester District website. And Natasha said she would post a link in the chat section below. But also, if you just Google Manchester Unitarians, you'll find it. And maybe Cheryl will be willing to also put in the chat the links for the Octagon's Facebook and Twitter accounts as well, so you could see the kind of stuff that she does. So what we're going to get you to do now is, you've heard us talking, so now we're going to give you a chance to talk, or we're going to make you do some work, depending on how you want to look at it. And we're going to use the amazing Breakout Rooms feature, which I love so much, to put you into small groups. And kind of as a starting point, really, going from something that Stephen said towards the start of this session, what I'd like you to think about in your small groups is how Unitarianism, or if you're not a Unitarian, your faith or your beliefs has transformed your life. And if you can, in a minute, sum that up and tell the other people in your group. And then, just because that's not enough for you to do, try and get that into the size of a tweet. So that's 140 characters, for those of you that are not tweeters. And maybe you may not be able to achieve that in the 5 minutes I'm going to give you. But what I hope that it does is to get us all thinking about if we just had 140 characters to say what was most important to us about our faith, or why we are Unitarians, or whatever we are, what would that be, and how would we say it? Sometimes as Unitarians we maybe talk a bit too much, we're a bit too wordy, lots of books and lots of lectures and talking. Maybe Stephen's onto something that we can maybe be a bit more concise in what we say. And I'm seeing in the chat that people are telling me on Twitter now you can actually have 280 characters, which I know, but you've only got 5 minutes, so I'm giving you 140 characters. So I'm going to divide you now into those groups, and just to remind you of the question, how has Unitarianism, or your faith, transformed your life? And then I'm asking you to try and make that into the length of a tweet. And when we come back all together, what I'm going to ask you to do is, for those of you who feel comfortable to, is to just type them in the chat so that we can see them all, and I'll read some out. And then we'll have a bit of time for Q&As for you to ask Stephen, Cheryl and Natasha some questions. So let's get you into some groups. There are a lot of us, so I'm going to put us into smallish groups of 3 or 4 people, and I'm going to give us 5 minutes to do that. So I'm sure that'll be plenty of time. How hard can it be? So welcome back, everybody. I think we're all back now. I hope that that was useful and interesting. Probably you didn't quite have time to do everything that I asked you to do in that 5 minutes, but what I'm going to ask you to do now is, if you have come up with something that you are happy to share, just to write it in the chat box on the right hand side. And at the same time as people are doing that, if you've got a question for one of the panelists or all of the panel, then to write that in the chat box as well. And if it's a question, if you could just write question at the start so I can pick them out easier, that would help me. And with your little tweets, I'll maybe read some of them out as well. And I'll save the chat so I can look at them afterwards. So I'm going to fix my gaze upon this chat box now and see. Okay, so a question that I've from Adrian: do I really have to learn to tweet? So I'm gonna go through and unmute all of the panel, and then you can choose which one of you wants to answer. There's Cheryl, she's unmuted, and I think I've lost Natasha. Oh, there's Natasha. Okay, so Do I really have to learn to tweet?
I mean, I would say no. I mean, I feel like I do as a minister, and but it's part of my work. I don't think it doesn't have to be everyone's calling. Maybe your congregation should. My minor congregation doesn't have a Twitch account for itself, but like a congregation needs to have a footprint in the digital world. Like, you know, I don't think you have to necessarily. I don't know. Someone else's views.
And while we've got you, Stephen, we've got another question for you actually, which is, how do you use social media in pioneer ministry?
Well, actually, it was kind of doing what I was saying that got one of my most significant connections, because I was tweeting out kind of a summary of a sermon about Buddha and Jesus, and then someone said, "Oh, that's interesting." We connected, and then with this Buddhist person, then it was. So yeah, I mean, in my pioneer ministry, I try to follow people in Cardiff that seem like what's going on, what's already happening in my city, in my neighbourhood, that I can find on Twitter and Facebook and things. And then see if a conversation emerges from that, which sometimes, not always, but particularly in one particular instance, did then become, let's have a coffee and then let's work together. So it can happen.
So we've got a good question here for all of the panel. You'll be pleased to know it's a very easy one. So the question is, what exactly is Unitarianism? And the questioner says that I can speak to how my church community has affected me, but I'm still figuring out what Unitarianism is. I'm sure you can answer that in a couple of minutes each, you know. Anyone want to jump in? Maybe I'll give you a few. Oh, I think, is Natasha muted? I'll give you a few minutes to think about that one. There's a question for Natasha and George, of course, who's now joining her on the screen. I'm going to try and unmute you, Natasha, but it doesn't seem to be working. So maybe you can unmute yourself. Lovely. Yep. So there's a question for you. How did you go about the design process when it came to the revamping of the website? Are there any tools you would recommend, or platforms such as Squarespace, for example?
Okay, so what I did initially, I contacted 3 different web designers and went with the one that had the most connection with, really. Now, Freddie is, for those of you that know Mark Hutchinson, Reverend Mark Hutchinson, it's his stepson. And he immediately understood what we wanted to do with the site, that we wanted to completely revamp it. Now, it's a WordPress that he uses. Apologies for George. It's WordPress that he uses, and we decided that we wanted to make it as colourful as possible, but still relevant, and we wanted to have the option to have blogs and interactions and various things on there. So, like I say, it was 6 months in the making, and it had to go to every one of our congregations at the MDA meetings for them to sign it off and be happy with what we've done. We came up against some conflict because it was a complete change to the norm, and people couldn't understand why we had coloured pencils and various things on there, but it's like we said, we wanted it to be completely fresh and completely new and relevant. And to be fair with Freddie, any ideas that we sort of came up with and ran past him, he'd be honest and tell me whether it'd work or it wouldn't. With the Unitarian magazine, we decided to make that available as a PDF online, and rather than just sort of posting it willy-nilly, we created its own sort of page for it to upload everything. So yeah, it's finding a good web designer, but finding somebody that's not only good at what they do, but understands where you're coming from, and gets your ideas and is willing to be honest about what will and will not work, if that helps at all.
Great, thank you. Yeah, very good answer, I think, very useful. So we've got a couple of minutes left, and I'm just going to read out some of the tweets of transformation that people have very generously shared in the chat box. So at random. Unitarianism has enabled me to accept who I am and given me space to explore who I want to be and how I can make a positive difference in the world. Another one here says, as a gay man, my Unitarian faith has helped me live fully and confidently. Unitarianism has widened horizons of perspectives I come into contact with and introduced me to new authors and writers. A couple of messages saying cute dog, which I'm guessing is more a message for Natasha than how they feel Unitarianism has changed their life. There's a nice one here. Unitarianism gave me permission to question, doubt, and disagree. Some people have whittled it down to just one word, that's pretty impressive. Permission to find one's own spiritual truth within an empathetic community. Individuality, community, and spiritual growth. As a queer woman, knowing my inherent dignity and worth is valued as a community leader by Unitarianism is deeply life-affirming. There's some real nuggets of gold in here, I think, and what it shows me is that if we can come up with this kind of powerful, like, emotional messages speaking our truth in 5 minutes in a Zoom call, then we should be able to do what Stephen talked about in our first 10 minutes about finding these powerful messages of transformation and communicating that to the world in the way that those two rival Buddhist organizations in Cardiff are able to. We should be able to do that too, and it feels like we've started to do that in those groups. We probably have time for one more question. So if anyone has a burning question they haven't yet posted, then now is your opportunity. If not, then you'll have 5 minutes to run to the toilet before the next session, which is Models of Ministry. So I'm going to give you a minute to type a question, and if not, then I will let you all go on to the next session. In the meantime, maybe this is a good opportunity just to thank again Natasha, Cheryl and Stephen for their time and their energy and for what they're doing in their congregations and for coming and sharing that with us here. So a silent round of applause or a hand wave for the three of you. Thank you very much for doing it. Lovely. Okay, so thank you all for coming. Please enjoy the rest of your day and the different sessions that we've got coming up, including the disco tonight and heart and soul sessions and the keynote and all of that. I'm sure I will see you all there virtually. So thank you all very much. Bye-bye.